Have you ever stepped into a place and felt every pair of eyes judging you before you even said a word? Have you ever been made to feel small simply because of the way you looked? Some moments in life stay with us forever. They leave an invisible mark, not because they were loud or dramatic, but because they quietly revealed how people truly see the world around them. This is not just a story about luxury cars or wealth. This is a story about kindness, about judgment, and about the silent battles people fight every single day. Battles that no one else notices until it is too late. Imagine a woman, simple and modest, walking into a world that believes worth is stitched into expensive fabrics or glued to shiny shoes. Imagine her standing tall, even when everything around her is whispering that she does not belong. But the real twist in this story? It was never about what she wore. It was about who she was, and who stood silently behind her, ready to remind the world that true value is never measured by appearance, and true kindness needs no stage. In just 24 hours, a simple walk into a dealership would turn into a lesson that no one there would ever forget. Not because she fought, not because she shouted, but because she carried a power that only the purest hearts can hold. The kind of power that speaks louder than any luxury brand ever could. Sometimes life tests us quietly, when no one important seems to be watching. And sometimes life answers even more quietly, but with a thunder that shakes every corner of the room. Today, you will witness what happens when judgment meets grace, when arrogance crashes into humility, and when true worth, the kind that cannot be bought or worn, walks straight through a glass door, wearing nothing but a white t-shirt and a smile. This is the story of Emma, and for those who thought they could measure her, tomorrow would bring a lesson they would never forget. The dealership gleamed like a palace of glass and steel, its walls reaching high into the clear blue sky. Through the tall, spotless doors, Emma stepped inside. Her sneakers made almost no sound against the polished marble floors, but her presence turned heads immediately. She wore no designer labels. Her jeans were faded, her white t-shirt plain. Her hair was pulled into a simple ponytail, and there was no heavy jewelry flashing at her wrists or neck. She carried only a small brown leather bag, worn soft from years of use. For a moment, the conversations in the room softened, the soft hum of business slowing just enough to notice her. Salesmen in crisp suits exchanged glances. A few customers, dressed sharply in tailored clothes, whispered without even trying to hide it. Emma's eyes, calm and curious, wandered across the shimmering rows of vehicles. Rolls, Royces, Bentleys, Aston Martins, they sat like kings on polished platforms, each one glinting under the soft golden lights. To many, this was a place of dreams. To Emma, it was simply a place where she hoped to find something special. She had come here today with a quiet purpose. Her sister, Caroline, had spent a lifetime battling hardships and had recently won a painful, private battle against breast cancer. Her upcoming 40th birthday deserved more than a gift. It deserved a celebration of survival, a dream. And Emma had decided that dream would be a beautiful, luxurious car, something Caroline had always secretly adored, but had never dared to wish for. As Emma took a few steps toward a stunning midnight blue coupe displayed near the center of the room, a tall man in a dark navy suit intercepted her path. His name tag caught the light: Blake Thompson, sales manager. Blake looked her up and down slowly, his expression barely hiding his judgment. His voice, when he spoke, carried a polished sharpness, the kind honed from years of believing he could tell a client's worth by their shoes alone. "Good morning," he said, forcing a smile that did not touch his eyes. "Are you looking for directions, ma'am?" Emma smiled politely, ignoring the faint laughter she caught from two younger salesmen across the floor. "Actually," she said with warmth, "I was hoping to ask about that blue coupe over there." Blake's eyebrows lifted slightly, amusement flickering across his face. He stepped aside just a little, as if unsure whether she was serious. His voice dropped lower, almost condescending. "That model starts at $285,000, he said, enunciating each number clearly, as if she might not understand. "Perhaps I could show you some options in our pre-owned collection across the street." For a brief second, Emma's chest tightened. Not from shame, not from anger, but from a familiar sadness. The kind that touches you when you realize some people will always look first at your clothes before they ever look into your eyes. She drew in a breath and let it go slowly. "I would like to know more about that one," she repeated gently, "if it is not too much trouble." Blake hesitated, then forced another professional smile. "Of course," he said. But his tone had already moved on, dismissing her before she had even begun. From the corner of her eye, Emma noticed a younger salesman, barely out of college by the look of him, watching the exchange with discomfort. His suit was too large, his shoes too shiny, but his eyes were kind. He looked as if he wanted to step in, but fear kept his feet rooted to the floor. Emma gave him a small, knowing smile, then turned back toward the car. She knew she was unwelcome here. She knew what they thought. But they were wrong, and tomorrow they would learn just how wrong they were. The soft hum of quiet conversations filled the dealership once more as Blake Thompson led Emma toward the midnight blue coupe. But his posture, his glances, and even the small sigh he gave under his breath made it clear that he believed this was a waste of time. He walked ahead of her, not bothering to match her pace, speaking over his shoulder in a tone that sounded more like a lecture than assistance. "This model," he said, "is called the Azure. It is a limited edition. Only 15 were made this year." He paused dramatically beside the car, almost guarding it with his body, as if worried she might touch it without permission. Emma admired the car silently, her hands folded neatly in front of her. She did not need to run her fingers across the gleaming paint to appreciate it. Her mind, instead, drifted to Caroline, to the years of hospital visits, the quiet bravery through endless treatments, the small smile her sister had worn even when she was too weak to stand. This car was not just a luxury, it was a symbol of survival, of gratitude, of new beginnings. "I would love to see the interior," Emma said softly, breaking the silence. Blake turned to her with a tight smile. "Viewings for vehicles like this are by appointment only," he said, in a voice that clearly suggested he doubted she could ever earn such an appointment. "Serious clients arrange private showings in advance. Perhaps, for now, you could take a look at the brochure." Before Emma could respond, the dealership's glass doors swung open with a soft chime. A couple walked in, the woman in a tailored red dress, the man in a dark designer suit, both radiating the kind of polished wealth that places like this worship. Blake's entire demeanor changed. He straightened, his voice brightened, and without a second glance at Emma, he called out warmly, "Mr. and Mrs. Harrington. Wonderful to see you again." Leaving Emma standing alone, he rushed across the floor to greet them, offering firm handshakes and leading them directly, and without hesitation, to the very same midnight blue coupe he had just told Emma required an appointment. Emma stood silently, feeling the thick, invisible wall between welcome and unwelcome grow even taller. From the corner of her eye, she saw the young salesman again. David, his name tag read, lingering nearby with an expression of clear discomfort. Slowly, shyly, he approached her, holding out a glossy brochure with both hands. "I am really sorry about that," he said in a low voice. "If you would like, I can tell you more about the Azure." Emma accepted the brochure with a soft smile. "Thank you," she said kindly, her voice carrying no trace of bitterness. While David described the powerful engine, the handcrafted interiors, and the stunning craftsmanship of the Azure, Emma's gaze remained on Blake. She watched as he opened the door for Mrs. Harrington with a theatrical flourish, offering her a seat inside the very car that moments ago had been by appointment only. The lesson here was clear. Kindness did not wear a suit, and arrogance could wear the finest silk. But the day was far from over. The real lesson was still waiting, just around the corner. The next morning dawned bright and cool, with a soft breeze that carried the scent of fresh rain from the night before. Boston Luxury Motors, gleaming under the morning sun, prepared for another day of business as usual. Inside the showroom, Blake Thompson adjusted his blue silk tie in the reflection of the glass wall, admiring the sharpness of his suit. He moved from car to car, ensuring everything was in its place. Today, he told himself, would be about real clients, real sales. No distractions. The clock on the wall clicked to 10:17 a.m. Outside, the world seemed to pause. From the broad sunlit road, a vehicle rolled into view. Silent, powerful, and unlike anything the staff had seen before. A Rolls-Royce Phantom, stretched and gleaming, with a midnight blue finish that seemed to shift colors with every ray of light. Conversations inside the dealership faltered. Phones were lowered. Coffee cups froze halfway to mouths. Eyes turned toward the floor-to-ceiling windows. Blake stood straighter, his instincts kicking in. Even he, who lived surrounded by luxury, felt a small jolt of awe. This was not just a car. This was a statement, a declaration of presence without a single word spoken. The Rolls-Royce stopped directly in front of the main entrance. For a moment, no one moved. Then, a uniformed chauffeur in crisp black attire stepped out. His movements were precise, almost ceremonial. He circled the car and opened the rear passenger door with a respectful bow. Out stepped a man whose very posture commanded attention. Tall, confident, dressed in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit that whispered of silent wealth. His hair, touched with silver at the temples, was neatly combed. His watch, understated yet expensive, caught a glint of the morning sun. He did not look around in confusion or awe. He walked as if he already owned the ground beneath his feet. Blake hurried forward, flashing his most polished smile, rehearsing a dozen different greetings in his mind. Whoever this man was, he was important. Blake could feel it in his bones. "Good morning, sir," Blake called out, reaching him before any of the junior salesmen could. "Welcome to Boston Luxury Motors. My name is Blake Thompson, sales manager here. It is an absolute honor to have you with us today." The man paused, regarding Blake with a quiet, unreadable expression. "Alexander Collins," he said simply, extending a firm hand. Blake's mind raced. The name sounded familiar, but he could not place it immediately. It did not matter. The car alone spoke volumes. This man was wealth, influence, power. "Mr. Collins," Blake said warmly, "how may we assist you today? We have just received some of our finest models, and I would be delighted to show you personally." Alexander gave a small nod, but his tone remained calm, almost detached. "I am here for a specific reason," he said, his voice low but carrying easily through the hushed room. "My wife visited your dealership yesterday." Blake's smile twitched slightly at the edges, confusion beginning to creep in. "Your wife?" he repeated cautiously. "Yes," Alexander said, his gaze sharpening. "She came here to inquire about a vehicle, a midnight blue coupe. She was dismissed." The room seemed to tilt for a moment, though no one moved. Staff members exchanged nervous glances. Blake's stomach dropped, though he kept his smile fixed tightly in place. "I believe there has been some misunderstanding," Blake began smoothly, but his throat felt dry. Alexander Collins smiled slightly, but it was not a smile of kindness. It was the kind of smile that spoke of a lesson about to be taught, and taught thoroughly. Blake had no idea yet, but the walls he had built with judgment were about to come crashing down. and this time there would be no escape. The air inside Boston Luxury Motors had changed. There was a tension now, sharp and electric, running through the glass walls and polished floors. Staff stood frozen in place, their eyes darting between Blake Thompson and Alexander Collins. Customers who had been admiring cars paused to listen, sensing something important was unfolding. Blake swallowed hard, adjusting his tie out of habit more than need. His smile, once so confident, had begun to crack at the edges. "Of course, sir," he said quickly. "We value all of our customers. If there was any inconvenience—" Alexander raised one hand slightly, cutting him off with a gesture so subtle yet final that Blake immediately fell silent. "There was no inconvenience," Alexander said calmly. "There was disrespect. There was judgment." His voice was not loud. It did not need to be. Every word landed with the weight of a hammer on steel. "My wife, Margaret Collins," he continued, "came here dressed simply. She asked about a vehicle, and she was treated as if she were invisible, as if her worth could be measured by the price of her shoes." The words echoed in the silence. Somewhere near the service desk, a pen dropped to the floor. No one moved to pick it up. Blake opened his mouth, searching for words, but found none. His mind raced, trying to piece together the woman from yesterday. Jeans, t-shirt, no jewelry. Could that really have been someone like Margaret Collins? Someone connected to a man like Alexander? Alexander stepped forward, his presence filling the space between them. "Let me be clear," he said. "You did not just turn away a potential customer. You turned away a person. Someone who has spent her life building a foundation that has changed thousands of children's lives. Someone whose strength and compassion you could not begin to measure because you were too busy measuring the scuffs on her sneakers." Blake's face had turned a shade paler. He could feel the weight of every gaze in the showroom pressing down on him. Richard Mason, the dealership's owner, appeared from a side office, having sensed the gathering storm. His face shifted from confusion to alarm in an instant as he quickly approached. "Mr. Collins," Mason said hurriedly, "please accept my deepest apologies. I assure you, this does not represent the values of Boston Luxury Motors." Alexander's eyes never left Blake. "Values are not words printed on a brochure," he said quietly. "They are lived in every small decision, every interaction." He turned slightly, addressing the entire room without raising his voice. "It is easy to be kind to those you think are powerful. It is easy to respect someone when you believe they can benefit you. But the real test of character," he paused, letting the moment settle, "is how you treat those you think have nothing to offer you." There was nowhere left for Blake to hide. The truth had been laid bare in front of staff, clients, and strangers alike. Alexander gave a small, almost imperceptible nod. "We were considering purchasing multiple vehicles for our foundation's programs. We were considering a long-term relationship with this dealership." Blake's heart sank into his stomach. He knew, without a single word more, that all of it had slipped through his fingers, lost in a single moment of thoughtless arrogance. Alexander turned back toward the Rolls-Royce waiting outside, his every step a quiet judgment heavier than any shouted accusation. The lesson had been delivered. The question was, who, if anyone, would truly understand it? Weeks passed, but the memory of that morning never faded inside Boston Luxury Motors. The silence, the judgment, the crushing weight of missed opportunity, it all lingered like a heavy mist. But something unexpected happened in the days that followed. Richard Mason, the owner, called an emergency staff meeting. Not to cover up the embarrassment, not to spin a better story, but to change the culture from the ground up. He brought in consultants who specialized in unconscious bias training. Every employee, from the highest sales manager to the newest intern, attended sessions where they were forced to confront hard truths about how they judged the people who walked through their doors. Blake Thompson sat quietly through those meetings, a shadow of the proud man he had once been. For the first time in his career, he listened without preparing an answer. He watched real stories unfold, stories of individuals who, like Emma, had been judged unfairly throughout their lives. And somewhere deep inside, the walls he had built around his pride began to crack. It was not just about losing a sale. It was about losing something far greater, the simple decency that should have come without a price tag. When an invitation arrived from the Collins Foundation to volunteer at a charity event, Blake did not hesitate. On a cool Saturday afternoon, dressed not in his sharp suit but in a simple blue volunteer shirt, Blake arrived at the Collins Foundation Sports Complex. Children raced across the basketball courts in wheelchairs specially designed for their needs. Laughter filled the air, pure and bright. Blake spent hours helping, pushing wheelchairs, handing out water bottles, cheering on the children as they made daring shots, and competed with fearless hearts. No one cared what shoes he wore. No one asked about the brand of his watch. They only cared that he was present, that he was kind. And for the first time in a long time, Blake felt something settle inside him. Not guilt, not shame, but a quiet sense of peace. Across the court, Emma stood watching. She wore a soft blue dress, simple yet elegant. Her smile was genuine, free of any trace of the judgment she had once faced. When she caught Blake's eye, she walked over. "How are you finding the experience?" she asked gently. Blake considered his words carefully. "It has been humbling," he said, "and necessary." Emma nodded, her eyes warm. "Kindness is not something you wear. It is something you give." He smiled, truly smiled this time. "I understand that now," he said. As the sun dipped low over the city, casting a golden glow across the complex, Blake watched a young boy in a wheelchair lift his arms in victory after a hard-fought game. Cheers erupted around him. Blake knew he would never again measure another person's worth by the cut of their clothes or the shine of their shoes. True wealth, he realized, had never been about bank accounts or luxury cars. It had always been, and would always be, about how you treat others when no one is looking. And sometimes it takes losing everything you thought mattered to finally find what truly does.